In the wake of the unjust and scandalous events that took place on the morning of the day Jesus was crucified, there is a despicable and abominable fact that doesn't attract our attention as it should. After being arrested in the garden, Jesus was taken to the house of the infamous high priest Caiaphas to be judged, so to speak. What a masquerade, it was more like a dressing down. During his interrogation by his accusers, the most shocking, unexpected, unprecedented, and unthinkable thing happened. The high priest tore his clothes, saying, "He has blasphemed. What more witnesses do we need? Look, you've heard his blasphemy." Matthew 26, verse 62 to 65. The high priest stood up and said to him, "Do you answer nothing? What do these men testify against you?" Jesus remained silent. Then the high priest spoke up and said to him, "I swear an oath to you by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus answered, "It is as you have said. However, I tell you, you will soon see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power, coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his garments, saying, "He has blasphemed. What more witnesses do we need? Look, you have heard his blasphemy. Why did Caiaphas tear his robe when this action is forbidden by the God of Israel?" In Exodus 28, from verse 31 to 32, we read, "You shall make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth. There shall be an opening in the middle for its head. The opening will be surrounded by a cloth, like the opening of a chainmail ribbon, so that it won't tear." God told Moses that the ephod had to be made in such a way that it would not tear. He was very explicit and categorical about this. It was specially designed so that it couldn't tear, either by accident or on purpose. Why was God so keen that the robe of Israel's high priest should not tear? Because his garments were sacred. He had to wear them at all times as the people's representative before God. He was a representation of Jesus, our high priest. Over his heart, he wore the breastplate of righteousness with its 12 stones, each engraved with one of the names of the 12 tribes. On his shoulders were the 2 shining onyx stones, which were also engraved with the names of the 12 tribes, 6 on one stone, the other 6 on the other. They show that God's people are precious in his eyes. Indeed, in ancient Israel, when a relative died, it was customary to show their grief. The relatives of the deceased would tear their clothes, cover themselves with sackcloth, and put ashes on their heads. This practice was widely accepted by all, except the high priest. He alone was strictly forbidden this practice. Why? As a representative of Christ, he had to be set apart. He was never, under any circumstances, to tear his clothes, even if his own child died. As high priest, Caiaphas would have known this, yet years later, as we've just read, he dared to do it. Why would he do such a thing if God was against it, categorically opposed? Firstly, because he was certainly a corrupt high priest. For some strange reason, at that time in Israel's history there were 2 high priests, but there was only supposed to be 1. This gives us a pretty good idea of how far they had strayed from God. As if that weren't enough, they had reduced and diminished the law into something manageable, or so they thought. Inwardly, however, their hearts were far from him. There is of a doubt that he knew the law perfectly well. His rank obliged him to. But what he didn't know was that the man he was facing before him was the incarnation of God in the flesh, and Jesus was preparing that very day to take office as high priest for all time according to the law. Priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, replacing the ancient order of the Levitical priesthood. Otherwise, without Nuit, Caiaphas had transferred his office. Indeed, when Caiaphas cried blasphemy, he was indignant that Jesus had appropriated the title Son of Man, which, unlike the title Son of God, would make him God. The title Son of Man has a profound meaning in relation to the title Son of God, which becomes clear when we the Gospels. The distinction between the titles Son of Man and Son of God is not as simple as it seems. While the Church historically associates Son of God with Jesus' divine nature and Son of Man with his human nature, both titles contain elements that refer to both his divinity and his humanity. The importance of the title Son of Man becomes clearer when we consider its frequent use in the New Testament. The term is mainly used by Jesus himself and refers to an Old Testament vision recorded by the prophet Daniel. In this vision, Daniel saw a heavenly court where the Ancient of Days was enthroned and judgment was established. A figure like a Son of Man appeared before the Ancient of Days and was given authority to judge the world. These images depict the Son of Man as a heavenly figure who descends to earth as a divine judge and then returns in God's presence. Daniel 7:13. Contrary to the assumption that calling himself Son of Man was an expression of humility, Jesus actually claimed divine authority. This title is not just about his human nature. It is a claim to heavenly authority. By referring to himself as the Son of Man, Jesus was emphasizing his role as heavenly judge and asserting his right to forgive sins and exercise authority on earth. We see this repeatedly in the Gospels. When Jesus healed on the Sabbath and proclaimed himself Lord of the Sabbath, Luke 6 verse 7, he asserted his authority as the Son of Man. Likewise, when he forgave sins and demonstrated his authority to forgive, Matthew 9 verse 6, this clearly indicated his role as heavenly judge. The title Son of Man underlines Jesus' unique and exalted status. It's not just a question of his humanity. It's a declaration of divine authority, underlining his unique and exalted status, underlining his role as judge and ruler from heaven on earth, otherwise God himself. The reaction of the high priest who tears his clothes when he hears Jesus claim to be the Son of Man underlines the weight of this title. The high priest regarded this assertion as blasphemy, revealing the conflict between their understanding of Jesus' identity and his true nature as God. In summary, the title Son of Man is a central and highly exalted designation for Jesus in both the New and Old Testaments. It represents his divine authority, his role as heavenly judge come down to earth, and his subsequent return to the right hand of God. Understanding the significance of this title adds depth to our understanding of Jesus' identity and mission. For some 1,500 years, Israel's high priest was never allowed to sit down while on duty in the temple, because his work was never finished. So there were no chairs in the tabernacle. But Jesus, as our high priest, entered the most holy place in heaven. He was both the priest and the offerer. He offered a single sacrifice for all time, but he sat down at the right hand of God because his work was finished. We are accepted forever because our high priest is eternally accepted.